So let's dive into Lore Corner. We're gonna have two longer pieces. They're both coming out of the book for this season, the Quintessence book. These are a few weeks old, but we haven't had a chance to get to these quite yet. I needed them to be unlocked in the API first, so I wasn't trying to read them off of the living room television from my office. But this first one is it's number 4. We've done 1, 2, and I want to say we've done 3 as well.
I think we did 3. I think that was the week that you did it with.
I'm trying to think.
I know we did 1 and 2 for sure, but was there?
I'm trying to remember if we did 3. Do you remember me making fun of Shah Han anytime recently?
No, no, because I
All
would
right.
always remember that.
All right, we're doing 3 and 4 then. If we have read 3, my apologies, everybody. We'll do 5 next
It's
week.
fine. Everybody likes to laugh at Shah Han. And if you don't, you're wrong.
I actually really love this piece of lore, though. I don't know if I can clown on him too much, because it kind of encapsulates the New Light experience as far as I'm concerned. So here we go. This the Quintessence book, number 3, Cold Forging. Eyes up, New Lights. Shah Han spoke to the group of guardians assembled at the edge of the Cosmodrome. A field of ancient automobiles spread out behind him. The guardians gathered at uneasy attention, fidgeting in their new armor. Han leapt onto the hood of a rusted-out car so he could be seen over the massive titans standing in the front. You may have heard they're coming for you, Han said, that the Hive god of trickery got her claws on the light somehow, and now she's sending the toughest baddies humanity has ever faced to drain the life from your carcass. Han shrugged. You heard right. The Guardians lifted their weapons and eyed the skies warily. They're coming to the Cosmodrome because the stories they're most frightened of have their beginnings here. They want to wipe out a whole generation of Guardians at its source. Han pointed at the Guardians who were still holding their weapons anxiously. They think they can hit you while you're all still green. Before you've got your feet under you, they think you'll go down easy. A haggard crow, cawing harshly, rose from somewhere within the sea of twisted metal. Han smiled and pulled a small canister from his belt, gave it a sharp twist, and tossed it carelessly into the rows of car behind him. The Guardians leaned forward in anticipation, but nothing happened. And that's where they're wrong, he continued. They have the light, same as you. They're strong, same as you. But you kicked your way out of your coffins right here in the heart of old Russia, like so many of the greats before you, and you found yourself in the vanguard. Han waited for a moment as if tasting the air. And being part of the vanguard, that means something. The most powerful warriors the world has ever known are here for you. Ikora, Zavala, Saladin, Shax, Saint 14, the guardians who have driven the Hive back into their holes again and again, they're up in the tower, and they have your back. Show them you're willing to fight for the vanguard, and they'll show you things you wouldn't believe. You'll learn how to weave a shield out of starlight. You'll learn how to wield a blade as hot as the sun. And behind him, a sudden explosion sent a geyser of dirt and rusted metal high into the air. The startled guardians huddled together. And you'll learn the importance of trip mine grenades, Han finished as he turned. Through the settling dust, he could make out the crumpled remains of a lucent Hive knight. 1 second, he said. He crept towards the remains, shot his hand in the clearing smoke, and withdrew with it a Hive ghost squirming in his fist. The ghost's sharp shell dug into Han's palm. Red glow flowed down over its flickering green iris. You're all going to die here, it hissed. Han leapt back onto the hood of the car, still holding the ghost tightly. Ghosts are tough to kill, both ours and theirs, he said. It takes overwhelming firepower or a special kind of weapon, something outside the laws of cause and effect, something paracausal. Han fixed his gaze on the assembled guardians and crushed the ghost in his fist. It burst in a flash of bubbling flame. Something like us, Han said. Like you. A roar echoed from the distant forest. The dark flames erupted from the tree line as wizards took to the sky. The ground shook as a clot of bellowing ogres tore across the field, flinging the remains of ruined cars aside as they charged. You! Shouted Han over the cacophony. Each and every one of you are weapons, chosen by the light. And sure, so are these Hive, and they're every bit as strong as you when you're alone. But being part of the vanguard, Han turned to the Hive army. His gun began to glow a brilliant gold. That means you're never alone. And when the Lucent Hive reached Shah Han, eager to feast on new lights, they met the vanguard instead. I think this actually goes like kind of perfectly hand in hand with the Galahorn lore that we focused on so much last season.
Right.
We have so few actual like recordings in the lore of what it's like to be a new light, but I think we all kind of had that feeling in Destiny 1 when we woke up in Old Russia. And if you've done the New Light quest, you probably feel the same way. This, despite having the goofiest character in the Vanguard, being the one who says it, I just like try to imagine that it's Crow or Zavala saying these lines instead, or even Saladin saying these lines instead, because I think it's more fitting. Yeah. But I think it's pretty great that we have, like, in lore, like, contextually, that there are still new lights being risen. And it's not just Randy being an idiot. This is pretty great. I'm actually almost a little surprised they didn't include good old Randy here. I think that would have personally been hilarious for me to see. But I like this. I think there's so few that describe what it's like to actually be a Guardian and not be, like, one of the legends, or to be the young wolf, that it's refreshing in a lot of ways.
Right.
So our next one is number 4, Shutdown. This is only alluded to a few weeks ago. This is it's called Shutdown. It deals with what the Crow does when we leave to go do the PsyOps mission on the moon for the first time. Crow pulled up his hood and watched as the Guardian ship roared out of the hangar to race after Kaido's flagship on the way to the Scarlet Keep. He kept to the shadows as he made his way to the helm, pushing through the throngs and the bazaar with an easy grace, inconspicuous even in his recognizable garb. His light movements bellied the twist of guilt in his stomach. Saladin requested him to handle recon on the mission, yet here he was, creeping instead through the tower like a common thief. There would be consequences, of course, but he could accept that. We all have to make sacrifices, he thought. He held his breath as he opened the doors to the Psiorium. As they clicked shut behind him, he threw back his hood and allowed himself a sigh and a smile. Crow looked up at the Lucian hive suspended in the holding tanks. Not dead, but certainly not alive. The Scion sat in its chair, twitching faintly, its long fingers moving as though tracing through water. Pulses of blue energy radiated out from the Scion's skull and into the depths of the machine. I've got some good news, Crow said pleasantly to the Scion as he passed. The Scion has always said nothing. Crow didn't mind. It probably took all its energy to keep the hive preserved well enough to skim through their memories. The war is over, thanks to you, Crow continued. They sent the Guardian, and when the Guardian sets out to do something, it gets done. The skin on his neck prickled in an old memory. Believe me. Crow approached a display interface covered in Cabal runes. He paged through menus until he saw the familiar Vanguard symbol nestled in a corner. He pressed it, and the language on the screen changed. He shook his head in wonder. Imagine what we'll be able to make in the future when we're not busy squeezing secrets from the hive. Crow frowned, looking up at the holding tanks. After all this ugliness is behind us, he said, and resumed scrolling through the menus. Now, how do we shut this thing down? He found his answer in a hidden directory of commands. Security, override, shutdown, immediate. He paused for a moment, imagining what Saladin's reaction would be, but he of all people should understand. After all, Crow said quietly to himself, the right path isn't always easy to find. Crow executed the command. He walked toward the Scion as the lights on the machine began to turn red in sequence. Let's get you out of here, friend, he said as the Scion began to stir. It blinked slowly and opened its eye. Crow smiled and waved. Good morning, he said. Would you like to go get some ramen? The pulsing current running through the tubes in the back of the Scion's head slowed, and Crow winced as a white-hot pinpoint of pain stabbed into his mind, shrieking a single word clear and impossibly loud. Stop! The machine sputtered. Sparks erupted from the central hub. Cracks spiderwebbed across the holding tanks. Electricity arced from the control panel, and Crow staggered backwards. Without warning, the energy current in the tube suddenly reversed. Waves of blue quickly flowed back towards the Scion. He was pulling at the cables connecting him to the chair when the first blast of feedback hit him. His body spasmed with pain. Wave after wave of psionic energy pounded into the base of the Scion's skull. His muscles stood out in sharp relief as he pulled against the cables, his hands desperate claws, his face stretched with terror. The pulses zoomed faster and faster, and the Scion began to scream. A high, thin noise. He beat at his own head with one spindly hand and reached the other out towards Crow. Crow reached back as another wave of energy hit the Scion, bursting his retina, turning his eye into a muddy black spear. Crow recoiled in horror, his mind pierced by unimaginable pain, and he fell to the floor in a heap. The machine groaned, hissing smoke, the holding tanks boiling, the hive bodies inside dancing grotesquely in the rotting fluid. The blaring sirens began to overpower the hoarse, sustained screaming. Something snapped inside the machine, and it stuttered to a stop. And finally, silence. So, I think this is super important to read when you see what happens with Crow, because we assume, oh, Crow just sabotaged it. Crow knew exactly what he was doing.
Right.
Crow just wanted the guy to go hang out with him. He just wanted to go get a bowl of ramen with the guy, thinking, hey, I'm doing him a favor by shutting this machine down, and hey, we can all talk about it when Saladin and the Guardian get back.
Right.
Instead, he ends up killing Keitel's most trusted lieutenant, somebody she's been friends with for years and years and years. Basically the leader of the Scions under her.
Right.
It's not a surprise to see that she reacted the way that she did.
Right.
That she was basically prepared to demand Crow's... Well, she did demand Crow's life.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, Saladin took his place. And I think this is a really important moment for Crow as a character. This particular page, it's not just do your actions have consequences, which he already knew, but it's just because you think you're doing something noble, it's not as clear-cut as pressing a button sometimes.
Right.
Like, if he would... It was a hidden menu that he went into, for God's sake. Like, surely there was a safer way to shut this thing down. Keitel would never build a machine and hook her most trusted lieutenant up to it without a failsafe, essentially.
Right.
But he kills him. And that's a valuable ally lost. Like, that's somebody Saladin had connected his mind to. He had seen his memories. They had been in the machine together. That's what really changed Saladin's mind about so much of this. And I think it's important for Crow as a character. Like, obviously, I think at this point it's safe to assume that a lot of the seasonal storytelling is going to have Crow as a central part of it going forward. All 4 seasons last year had him. This season has him at the forefront. It's probably not a stretch to imagine that the rest of these will have him at least heavily involved in the lore of the season.
Right.
And so I think this year is going to be a journey of discovery. We already know there's changes coming to Iron Banner. And in the aftermath of this, Saladin leaves the axe for Crow. The axe and his Iron Banner medallion. He leaves them in the helm. You see him leaning up there against the war table. You have to wonder, is Crow maybe going to be the announcer for Iron Banner going forward? Saladin's the vendor, but Crow is one of the announcers? Like, we've talked so much about Ephrodite coming back.
Right.
I think it's got to be Crow at this point.
I mean,
this almost solidifies it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense at this point, right? I mean, if Saladin's leaving him his stuff, like, that would make sense, at least for a while, right?
I would also, like, secretly love for Crow to become the leader of the next generation of Iron Lords, like, at the end of the story.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, I was going to say, well, aren't all the Iron Lords really, like, Titans, but I guess that's not true. But
yeah,
I don't know. That would be an interesting turn of events from what we were originally talking about, right? I mean, because we thought he was going to take over as the Hunter Vanguard at some point last year. At this point last year,
I mean, I definitely think it's still possible, but I think it's less possible now looking ahead.
Yeah. You think the Hunters are ever going to get a Vanguard at this point?
No, I think the Vanguard is going to be just completely destroyed by the end of this expansion.
Yeah.
It would not shock me if we lose Ikora before the end of the year. Or in, like, the opening stages of Lightfall. It would not shock me to lose Ikora. And Zavala be the only one left of the core 3. Huh. But who knows? Who honestly knows what's going to happen there? I don't know if you can really get rid of Ikora either, because that's where you go get all your new aspects and fragments from.
Right.
They've kind of retconned her into doing that. But I do think, there's a crushing death coming. And I feel like Crow is one of the ones who is, like, definitively safe at this point. And this latest story arc, I think, kind of shows that, because, we gave him a pass already. Saladin took his place in terms of punishment.
Yeah, I still think it's Saladin.
I still think Saladin at some point, but this latest storyline with him
Yeah,
has definitely, I would say, bought him a few seasons.
yeah,
The real tell will be the Iron Banner title that we get next season.
yeah,
And like, is Saladin going to continue being the vendor? Because I mean, there is still time left in the season. Something still technically could happen.
yeah.
Or it could kick off next season or something like that. Like, who knows? But uh, one thing is for certain, like the alliance between the Cabal and the Vanguard is already shaky as it is, and that's why like Keitel was gonna kill Crow, and Zavala was prepared to throw and Saladin notes this. Zavala would have thrown the entire alliance away to protect Crow.
Yeah.
Which I think says something about how drastically his opinion of him has changed in the last year.
Right.
During Chosen, when he found out it was Uldren, he was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
He was absolutely shocked. And instead of being repulsed, we got the exact opposite of Crow and Cade, or of Uldren and Cade.
Right.
During Cade's execution.
Right.
We got Zavala picking him up in what's probably the most powerful scene that we've seen in Destiny.
Right.
It's gotta be like a top 3 or 4 in terms of like how powerful that is, I think, to the story and to the community, the parallels that it draws. And the fact that we got that in a seasonal activity.
Right.
This is why we need a theater, so we can keep watching these.
Right.
But then you watch the journey that Crow has gone on and how, he was secretly helping the Elixni that were in the Elixni Quarter. Right. And then how he was assigned to Keitel's flagship in light of the Savathun reveal. When she revealed who he was put directly under Saladin. Mm-hmm. And Saladin he notes that he doesn't know how he feels about looking at him, knowing that this guy in a past life murdered Cade.
Right.
So what does that mean going forward? Well, I think that means that with Crow, he's just, I don't know, he's that important to the story. Like, he's really taken on that role they originally intended for him to have it way back in Destiny 1. And sure, it took us 8 years to get there, but I think they finally have looped back around to who he was intended to be.
Right.
Maybe not as like carefree and happy-go-lucky as he was supposed to, but I think things like this, like the nuance and the details of like, oh, I just wanted to meet my friend. I just wanted to go get a cup of ramen with him. Like, yeah. He's so much more like Cade than we're ready to admit.
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the true joys, and that's going to be continuing to be the joy of seeing this character grow. I'm really excited to see where they take his character next season in light of this season's developments.
Yeah. I wonder if I wonder how people who jumped in with like Shadowkeep or Beyond Light who didn't get to know Cade, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how people who didn't grow with Cade during Destiny 1 and into Destiny 2, how their feelings of Crow differ from someone like us,
Well, and so that's actually been like kind of a hot button topic lately, with the campaigns being sunsetted, and now especially with the Forsaken campaign being gone. It's like, why should we care about this? Like, Cade doesn't exist to us. He exists in a couple of strikes, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you have to come up with, that's why I think the cloud-based solution from last week that we speculated about really, really intrigued me, because if you had the option to you're going to be forced to play the Red War campaign, and then you can go do any campaign you want to.
Right.
I think that would be really cool. You could even bill Forsaken as, see the fall of Uldren and the death of Cade, or see Crow's origins or whatever.
Right.
I think there's a proper way to build that, and just take the scene from Black Armory and tack it on as like a post credits or something.
Right. Yeah.
There, of him being resurrected.
Right.
I think there's a number of things you can do, and that's an interesting point. Like, Crow is one of the central 6 or 7 characters now to the storyline.
Right.
And he's only going to get more and more important. Like, the Sav twins are going to be more and more important.
Yeah.
How do you not do that? I mean, we see Mara's still grappling with it.
Yeah.
We know that from the lore. With her brother being alive, with the fact that he's a guardian now.
I mean, we saw that last season.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you don't look at the lore, we saw it last season.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting to see how like her interactions with both Crow and with us have really changed her opinion of the Guardians over the years. You know, when we first meet her, she's not as hostile as her brother, but she's definitely not welcoming to us. She mainly uses us as a means to an end. And then it's like her experience in the Taken King really changes her. And when she comes back in Forsaken, when she meets us in the Dreaming City, when we go to the Queen's court, it's kind of different. Like she's preparing for a coming war, and then of course, you know, her returning, and how just the difference since the last time we majorly interacted with her, which really was House of Wolves, if you think about it, outside of a few cutscenes and a few dialogue scenes in her court.
Right.
That's really the last time. Like she hasn't been on screen that much for a character as important as she is, and
right.
You know, now with her grappling with, you know, like, well, we're probably her strongest ally. She is, aside from us, like it's like us, her, and like the remaining disciples are the most powerful beings in the galaxy.
Right.
So like she is clearly the only person that is like on par with us. I mean, we have slayed hive gods, for God's sake. Like, sure, Ikora may be able to throw out like 2-3 supers at a time. Same with Osiris. But we have killed how many gods now? How many of them have we turned into weapons?
3.
At least 3.
3.
At least maybe 4.
Yeah.
So I think I'll take the money on an alliance with the Sov siblings.
Yeah.
But I think that's gonna do it for Lore Corner tonight.